This is what a tearing your finger pulley looks like. As a warning, you may not see the tear, but you will hear it. The most common injuries come from the fingers, making up 41.2% of all climbing injuries. This small area of your body bears a remarkable distribution of pressure. The finger pulleys are the connective tissue that house the tendons in your fingers, like the eyelets of a fishing rod, keeping your tendons close to the bone as your finger bends. Out of the 5 finger pulleys, the A2 is most likely to suffer injury. Although it's the toughest, supporting the rest of your pulleys, it's not as flexible. A difficult hold like a full crimp can lead to what climbers call bowstringing, where an A2 pulley tear is followed by more pulley tears, causing the tendon to bow away from the finger bone. This is your body on sport. Before we focus on what each body part does, let's examine the ideal climber's body. If you're tall, you might think you have an automatic advantage, but it's not just height that makes the difference. In fact, height has its downsides. It's true, tall climbers can use their height to reach further, covering the same amount of ground in fewer moves. They don't need as much finger strength either. Every 20 centimeters of height requires 5% less finger strength to do the same moves. Your climbing points of contact are your feet and your hands, and the taller you are, the longer the distance is going to be for a climbing movement. But with the distance increased, more force has to be applied to hold those positions and create tension between those 2 points. And that's not the only instance where being shorter can come in handy.
So if you're taller, some of the disadvantages is that you cannot do these small box problems. You're kind of scrunched and it's a little awkward to move your body, or if you have kind of feet that have to go higher, typically since their appendages are longer, so it's a little more awkward to get the toes and feet up there.
Instead of height, consider what climbers call the ape index. That's the ratio of your height to your arm span. The average person has an ape index of 0, so height and arm span are equal, while the average pro climber will be +2. The larger the ape index, the easier it will be to reach far holds without gravity weighing on a longer body. Then again, with overhanging walls, the shorter the ape index, the closer you are to the wall, giving you a stronger grip on undercling type hold.
Smaller type climbers, they're sometimes more powerful, or they can use their body in different ways, get very creative with their beta, so-called. Way back when climbers were, out there in the wilderness climbing rocks with these cameras, they would use Betamax tapes, and then they'd be giving it to each other, sharing this information, and that kind of became slang. Oh, do you have beta for this? Let's say someone has really long legs or is extra flexible, they could do what's called breaking the beta, and they find their own way to kind of almost cheat the system, and that's another technique that people can use. Again, it's okay to break beta, it's kind of creative.
Most climbers agree there isn't a perfect body prototype, but it's important to be conscious of your strengths and weaknesses and be ready to train with them in mind. But what does it take to build your body for climbing? It's a high-impact, high-intensity sport, and though it may not look like it, every muscle in your body is working to get you up that wall.
Exercise, right? Different modes like swimming, biking, running, etc. They have what's called a metabolic equivalent, METs for short. So it kind of tells you how many calories per kilogram your body weight it burns. So something very light walking is a 2, 1 kind of thing, very low on the MET scale. General climbing is about an 8.
For years, the ideal climber body type was as skinny as possible. After all, lighter climbers carry less up the wall. But nowadays, due to the change in competition style, especially outdoors where momentum is a must, your body needs power. Power is strength with speed. This graph, the force velocity curve, shows very high force and very low speed at one end of the curve, like lifting a very heavy weight. At the other end, there's no real resistance or strength involved, but a high level of speed, like throwing a baseball. The sweet spot for developing power is about 30 to 50% of your maximum strength. To develop an even broader range of power, it helps to use explosive type movement. Fast and efficient climbing can help you avoid fatigue. The slower you move through a route, the more strength you need to maintain each hold and carry out each movement. Imagine doing a single push-up at 10% of your ordinary speed. Not as easy. Climbers who don't have the power to push themselves through dynamic moves are instead forced to make more creative maneuvers, focusing on precision and technique to make their way through a route.
Even a small foot chip or a small hold or a small adjustment in your body just makes that move or climb possible or easier. And it's fascinating how nuanced it is, but it's a thing, yeah. They call it the micro beta, like this little tiny adjustment, yeah.
A crucial element in creative climbing is flexibility. With two hands firmly on their holds, an unusually high heel reach can give you the leg up you need, improving posture and preventing injury in the process. When you perform a high step, lifting your foot up high, and need your hips to bend a lot, or when you use techniques like flagging, reaching out to the side, or stemming, pressing your legs wide, having flexible and mobile hips is key. Regular targeted dynamic stretches will get you there. Power and flexibility mean nothing if you can't grab your holds.
Come on, Julia.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
Training and conditioning your skin to withstand rough surfaces is just as important as building your muscles.
Oh, the skin is super important, ultra important. I mean, it is the protective layer. It's the biggest organ in the body. But for climbers specifically, your skin has to acclimate and adapt to the environment that you're putting it in. And for climbers, it's a lot of, sharp or hard or very textured surfaces.
Crucially, your skin should be dry. As a climber, your worst enemy is a natural part of exercise: sweat. The sweat glands in your hands produce moisture that can make staying on the wall impossible. Chalk, magnesium carbonate, absorbs sweat from your hands so you can maintain a dry grip. That's why you'll often see climbers with a bag of chalk around their waists. But too much chalk residue on a hold can actually make it harder to hold onto.
I want to brush this one. You want to brush it for me?
Yeah, you gotta save your arms. You gotta save your arms, okay? Oh, this is like the most awkward.
It's just like that's the one I'm gonna grab. So I want it to be like not greasy.
We need good texture.
After everyone touches it, it gets really greasy.
Yeah, it gets really greasy or chalky. So traditionally, yeah, with rope climbing, they have it kind of attached to their harness. And they, since it is a sustained climb, longer climb, they do need to chalk up regularly because the hands get a little, sweaty along midway. It's a skill that you have to develop to find resting positions. So obviously you don't want to chalk up when it's a hard move or something really kind of sketchy. So she finds areas that she can kind of hold on to rest.
The skin on our hands and feet has friction ridges, like our fingerprints, that increase grip similar to how tree frogs have adhesive pads to help them climb. To make the most of these friction ridges when climbing, your skin should have these important qualities. It should be smooth, avoiding weak spots where tearing can start. Climbers even use sandpaper to smooth burrs in the skin.
It is usually one of the first things as either a beginner or intermediate that is a limiting factor because it wears down and it hurts and it's very difficult to overcome that. You just need the time to rest and let it adapt.
It should be thick. This thickness can be achieved after a lot of climbing or manual work, adding to that layer of comfort when pulling on rough, rocky surfaces.
Once it does, you develop these thick calluses that work for you in your favor, and they actually give you extra texture and grip, but also they give you that extra layer of protection and padding that you need. Then after a while, it becomes almost a non-issue.
But you can't rely too heavily on thick skin.
If they build up too thick, now you have the risk that they actually tear off, which is common in climbing. They call them like flappers and things like that, where it could just ruin your entire climbing session or trip.
This indoor climbing wall is made up of a variety of holds that resemble those you may see outdoors. While no two holds are identical, they can be separated into distinct categories. Jugs are large open holds, excellent for resting on. Edges vary from tiny cuts in the wall to huge ledges. Crimps are very small, barely enough room for the pads of your fingers. Pinchers are exactly as they sound, with the thumb offering extra strength to the hold. Slopers are deceivingly tricky, rounded without an angle to hold onto. Pockets are holes wide enough for your whole hand or only a finger. Underclings allow you to grip from the bottom to pull up. Then there's the side pull, the gaston, the jib, the slot, and the jug so big you call it a bucket.
The black holds here, the black foot, you notice how sometimes they're a little reflective. So this is what they call a dual text type hold, where The bright reflective parts are actually slippery. So they're not really textured, so
really
it's not
slick.
great for the feet. So it's very awkward to kind of step on them, so she's got to be careful, because if you accidentally don't have the right placement or the pressure, it could easily slip off. It's very slippery, yeah. But again, she's using really good technique here, kind of pushing off that flat part of the wall. Smear, Julia, smear. Yeah, use that friction. Beautiful. Look at that. You see that big hold on the right there? Look at the flexibility here. Awesome.
Wow, that's hard.
Yeah. These holds are pinches coming up, which are, again, not super friendly, but she's got to kind of wrap her thumb around them, grab them. And she's doing a beautiful little back flag here, which again, counter shifts her weight so that she can pull and move off of that hold.
When it comes to fingers, the thicker the better. As you grab onto a hold, you're activating the flexor tendon, the flexible tissue that helps you grip, which is supported by a series of pulleys all along the fingers. A thicker finger often means a stronger flexor tendon, helping you avoid the dreaded pulley tear. As you continue to build your climbing muscles, your fingers will follow suit, but too thick, and they'll have trouble fitting into pockets. Shorter fingers can come in handy, since the shorter distance between the joint and the hold creates a mechanical advantage, allowing for greater force to be applied with less effort. However, a wider finger span can help for certain holds like big pinches. The hold that puts the most strain on your fingers is the crimp, so it's important to use the right technique if you want to avoid injury. There are 3 types of crimps: the open hand, the half crimp, and the full crimp. The open hand, or the 3-finger drag, involves hanging your index, middle, and ring fingers off the hold, relying on friction and tension rather than your pulley muscles. This crimp is helpful for conserving energy. The half crimp is the most versatile, bending the same 3 fingers into a 90-degree angle while the shorter pinky remains straight. Meanwhile, the thumb rests next to the index finger or onto the hold if you can. The full crimp is the same as the half crimp, but the distal interphalangeal joint of the thumb folds over the index finger, securing the shape and allowing you to generate more force on the hold. With a well-calloused hand to grab a hold, it'll take grip strength to keep holding on. The average man can grip at 105 to 115 pounds of force, while most women grip at around 55 to 75 pounds. Elite climbers, on the other hand, can exceed 140 pounds, around the weight of a Komodo dragon. To build that strength, it helps to use a campus board. Campusing is moving from handhold to handhold without using your feet. But it's not just the hands that produce that gripping power.
The forearms are incredibly important as well, because they are the motor that kind of drives the fingers into closing or holding onto a hold so it doesn't pop open. We have these what they call synergistic muscles, where if you close your fingers, it kind of transmits all that force to your forearms and then to your biceps. When you climb, if you don't warm up properly, or you're just fatigued in general, your arms literally become pumped, where it becomes really turgid, and like you kind of cannot like use your fingers properly, like kind of like that gym pump I guess people get. It's kind of a scary feeling, especially if you're climbing or a long endurance route and you just find somewhere to shake out. You know, they literally like shake their arms and just kind of chalk up.
This forearm pump is caused by a combination of factors. The burning sensation is a result of blood lactate, a kind of fuel for your cells when they're working hard. Concentration of blood lactate is usually 1 to 2 millimoles per litre at rest, but can rise to greater than 20 millimoles per litre when exerting yourself on the wall. At the same time, more blood is flowing to your arm as you work to hold your grip. Think about when you donate blood, and the nurse asks you to clench your fist to locate a vein more easily. When climbing, holding that same static position for too long can quickly lead to muscle fatigue. That's where your legs come in.
Utilizing, again, good foot technique work here. Corkscrew motion, drop knee there, where the drop knee is kind of twisting, pivoting off the knee, and really utilizing that mechanical advantage where she could step up through the legs rather than just yanking and pulling through with the arms. Again, a lot of efficiency here, where if you were just to use a lot of arms, you'd quickly tire out and it wouldn't be sustainable.
In climbing, straight arms are encouraged. You'll want your skeleton to take most of the weight, leaving your muscles, especially your legs, to do the lifting. The slightest bend in your elbow causes your muscles to have to do the work to hold it there.
Funny thing about climbing, again, if you're not familiar with it, people misunderstand or they underestimate the importance of legs. Legs are extremely important. They place where you are, they control your body mass and center, and that placement dictates also how much or how little you're using your fingers and arms. So it's efficiency. If you're not properly utilizing your legs and taking full advantage of them, you are making it harder on yourself by having these smaller appendages try to work up to that. So everything just has to work harder to compensate for that. The legs, we forget, they're extremely powerful. They're much more powerful than our arms could be. So being efficient with that pattern and that strength, you quickly find out it's actually a lot of legs.
Before reaching the next handhold, move your feet to a higher position first. That way, your legs can do most of the work by pushing off the hold, not unlike a deadlift in weightlifting. Your quadriceps and hamstrings help you step up on footsteps and control your body positioning. Your calves are activated for the precise footwork on small holds, and your ankles and feet work with your toes to maintain balance.
We have this funny thing in climbing where we make like these sounds, like almost like this, like it's when we exhale all our air and like just temporarily like tighten our core to like make the next move. I know it sounds really funny, but you'll hear it all the time in the gym, people just like grunting.
Engage your core. It's something you hear in every sport, and for good reason. It keeps you balanced, supports your spine, and leads to a fitter form overall. In climbing, it serves as a vital bridge between your upper body and lower body, but it's the hips, not the abdominals, that serve as your center of mass.
The most common thing I see is that just in general, people don't know how to move. They're so rigid. We're so used to not moving our core in different ways that once you have to, it's a little foreign for them or it's counterintuitive. Not only the abdominals, but the hips are incredibly important. We often forget our hips are really the true center of mass that we have, not really the abdominal region. Hence why also the harness is actually kept there. Beautiful, there's a drop knee there where she's pivoting her hips and purposely creating more center with her mass so that she can move on to the next move here. When you're on things that are overhung, meaning not flat, but they're kind of like angled, like a cave or some kind of feature, this is where you have to stay close to the wall, drive your hips into it, make sure you're not sagging, because otherwise that's gonna really weigh you down more.
Each climbing route poses a problem in need of solving. And without the proper technique while moving between holds, you can easily find yourself stuck with nowhere to go but down.
High feet here so that she can not utilize too much of her own fingers and arms to just yank and pull. Although climbing is a lot of arms and hands and fingers, we do want to be efficient with our technique work so that we don't tire out too quickly. And again, wonderful big move there to a crimp hold, which is pretty small, rough on the fingers, but she's got powerful finger flexors, great back muscles, awesome. Woo! Good job.
When on the wall, it's important to know you can put all your trust in the gear you take with you. These shoes may look like simple Velcro slippers, but they're one of the most complex tools in a climber's kit. Climbing shoe manufacturers like La Sportiva and Tenaya have invested huge amounts studying gorilla prehensile abilities and feline fingertip sensitivity to develop the perfect climbing shoe. The basic shoe is made up of material upper, leather synthetic or hybrid, and rubber rands that wrap around the shoes to provide grip. You can feel the rand doing its job when you balance on a small edge and the back of the shoe pushes on the back of your heel. Without that support, your footwork would be far less precise, and precise footwork is everything when you're high on the wall. The shoe will have some degree of downturn. This is the extent to which the forefoot area tilts downward from completely flat to aggressive. The greater the downturn, the more power reaches the toes, supporting those small footholds in overhanging terrain.
Climbing shoes are typically designed so that your feet are a little bit scrunched and kind of almost like pointed so that you can really create that focal point of balance and strength. And yeah, so sometimes, unfortunately, I do see also big toe injuries where they're like, yeah, just toeing a lot or doing these like very footy climbs and my toe hurts. My name is Richard Lee. I'm a physical therapist at R. Lee Physical Therapy.
Today, our climber Julia is visiting Richard for a checkup.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
I mean, currently obviously there's always little finger injuries here and there,
Yeah.
but sometimes I experience pain kind of in the lower part of my middle finger here and this finger.
So finger injuries, super common for as a climber, of course. Our main tendons kind of run along the fingers, allow us to grip and kind of do all these different moves as climbers that we do, and of course run all the way down to the forearm. A lot of times with climbing, there's a high force load on the finger tendons, which causes them to get achy, or with enough volume or force, they kind of get a little sprained, like micro tears occur. So does it hurt when I poke this here?
Ever so slightly.
It does.
Yeah, just
On a scale of
tiny
0
bit.
to 10, what are you thinking?
Like a 3.
Like a 3? Okay,
Yeah.
so like
It's not like
moderate
pain, but I can feel achy.
discomfort.
achiness,
Okay.
yeah,
Does this one feel better, worse, or the
That
same?
one feels better.
Better. So it's notably this one,
yeah.
and then of course this one I'm assuming 0, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Just the pressure, yeah. So again, your flexor tendon, maybe possibly even the A2 pulley, which is like a pulley that's located on the finger that holds the flexor tendon in place, could be irritated. Commonly, again, with smaller type holds or very forceful type moves. So with this level of pain or discomfort and the way it moves, again, just even those basic pieces of information could tell me she's not completely, not able to climb like off the wall. I would just kind of advise, okay, like there is probably a little bit of irritation. When did you last climb?
2 days ago.
2 days ago, okay. So again, fairly normal for a few days, like same as if you would work out and you'd feel kind of sore for a couple of days. So again, I deem that like a fairly normal type of ache pain, and the 3 out of 10 or below is actually a pretty good sign where it's like, oh, it's tolerable. So it would be a low-grade injury if not, and I would say, hey, give it just a little extra time before you climb again. And then if you can in that time, also start, just doing some light, gentle loading for the fingers and doing some flexor exercises.
It was hurting a lot, and then, as us athletes do,
Yeah.
I was climbing and on it,
Yeah.
and I was like, wait, it actually feels kind of good.
Yeah, when it warms up and
And
stuff.
then, and then it like magically just felt better,
Okay.
and then it like hurt again another time. So it's just this ongoing thing of like, it hurts and it doesn't. And
I see. So listening to that kind of tells me it's a little bit more chronic. If it's reoccurring, it has this kind of pattern where it feels good, and then you do something, and then it kind of exacerbates, and then it goes back down. I try to point out that there is maybe a little bit of a cycle going on where you're healing and your body's trying to heal, but then when you apply this force load too suddenly or too quickly before it's ready, it kind of reverts back into its injured state. So that's where I'm going to say, again, try to recognize your overall climbing pattern, your routine, how often you climb, and if anything, we can add these little buffers so that we can help it really along the journey. If you're doing what's called projecting, which is climbing kind of at your limit, I would say maybe avoid some of that limit climbing for several weeks until this like kind of fully goes away, and keep that kind of mid-level climbing there until we can kind of slowly, gradually ramp it up.
Comparing climbing with other sports, you're relatively safe from injury, especially indoors. Studies show 4 injuries for every 1,000 hours of climbing, next to soccer at almost 8 and basketball at just over 9. If you do sustain an injury, 93% of them are down to overuse.
The highest incidence of injuries in younger people, males especially, is what they kind of deem the weekend warrior types, where traditionally they have like the 5 days a week in the office, mostly sedentary, and then that one Saturday or Sunday, they're just going hard with the boys, or that's where the injuries are really commonplace, because your body is adaptive, and 5 days out of the week or 6 days out of the week, you're mostly doing nothing, and then all of a sudden you give it this high stress force load. It's like, well, no wonder you got injured.
Avoiding injury is about paying attention to your body, from the pressure on the pulleys in your fingers to the extending flexors in your toes. Up to 80% of climbers experience foot pain simply because their shoes don't fit.
Contrary to like common belief, injuries that I see or that are most common is like the micro-traumatic injuries, not the macro. So people often think, oh, you get injured by doing this really hard thing, or you fall and you break something, or something tears. It's a small sliver. In reality, it's really just these over time kind of practices that I see where individuals get really excited, or they don't understand, maybe what they're doing is too much or too quick.
7.7% of injuries happen to the hand, while another 7.7% are forearm or elbow pathologies. Lower leg or foot injuries make up 10.6%, but it's shoulders that contribute 20.2%.
So the shoulders are also very susceptible to injury, not only because we use them quite a bit for climbing, very overhead reachy type moves in awkward positions, but also people sometimes forget this, our shoulders are the most fragile joint in our body, just simply because they're the most mobile. A lot of rotator cuff tears I see, labrum tears, bicep tears. I've had plenty of those too, so I'm very familiar with that.
When you decide you're ready to take your climbing outdoors, expect a higher chance of injury. Fatality rates can vary from as low as 0.13 per 1,000 hours of climbing to more extreme examples like K2, the second tallest and deadliest mountain in the world to climb, with a fatality rate as high as 25%.
You know, there's crazy ones where people could deck by some freak accident or mistake, or maybe even gear failure. They fall from an incredibly tall height. Flatter ones, if you fall, they call it cheese grating, which is kind of, gnarly. It's a gnarly term, but yeah, you essentially you can scrape up things. You can, bump into stuff and your skin's kind of gone. But yeah, those are some pretty vicious things I've seen.
Death is a very rare consequence, with roughly 30 climbing-related deaths recorded each year out of over 44 million active climbers. 25% of these deaths are a result of errors while rappelling, using ropes, and 30% are due to free solo climbing accidents, climbing with no aid. When free soloing, one simple mistake can cost you your life. Thankfully, an ordinary climber like yourself will have soft mats to break your fall, but even then, there's a right way and a wrong way to fall.
Believe it or not, I've heard, again, crazy stories, people falling from 40 feet from the top and landing, but being okay because of that layer of mat. Understanding also like how to properly fall is a skill in and of itself. Because at first, that's how most people do get injured. They don't understand how to land, or sometimes you don't fight it and you just kind of like land weird, but that's still safer than trying to right yourself and getting something like your leg or ankle caught under yourself, and that could actually cause a fracture or something. A lot of climbers also, both indoors and out, the immediate instinct is to brace backwards with their arms. Yeah, they call them foosh injuries, fall on outstretched hand. It's an amazing thing. The human body is just like incredible. Just don't underestimate it, and don't take it for granted, and never limit yourself,
Thanks for watching the very first episode of Your Body on Sport. Let us know which sports you want us to cover next time.